We will call to order the Board of Selectmen special meeting on Wednesday, October 23rd, here at the Woodbridge Town Library Meeting Room. First item on the agenda is a review and update with regard to our ARPA funds. Tony?
Yes, I have an update for you to review. This is, thank you. So this is just for review. There's no action tonight. This is just to review where we are in this from our last discussion. Just to review the sheet. So the town received 2.589568 in funds. We've so far spent $968,000 on senior center, center gym, lots of application, and road paving. We've obligated under contract $333,000 for the fire training and storage facility in the SLR design proposal. That's sort of in the process that you saw at your last meeting. And we have plans for the community center improvements, which will probably be at your next meeting. And there's additional survey work by SLR and a drainage study by SLR, which we discussed at the last meeting. So that's $380,000 that we have planned. So the remaining funds, which is $511,562, what I did was I took a number of capital, most of these are capital projects. I would say from police vehicle on down are capital projects that were in the capital budget that were identified for 26 when we did the 25 budget. So I'm sort of finalizing some of the pricing on some of these. So these are our budget estimates at the moment, but you will see some of the items that we typically, the goal here is to then remove these items from next year's capital budget. So if we start with police vehicle, these are things that you've seen before as a treadmill and recreation. There's fire hose replacement at the fire department. There's a pickup truck in Public Works. There's a mower in Parks. Baseball grooming machine in Parks. Those are all in the capital budget. The center sidewalk was something that was going to be added, and that's for contract administration and project representative for the sidewalk that's going here in town that we've received a grant for. That project is currently out to bid, and we have to get bids back by the end of November. And finally, playground improvements at the Board of Education. That was we're still finalizing that figure also, but there were some playground improvements in the budget and some additional improvements that are for the Board of Education. So, and you can see there's still some remaining at the bottom.
You didn't mention
I didn't go to the top two yet.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. The first one is the funding necessary for the master plan for the country club. And we currently have a grant, as you know, and we have some funds existing, but this would be necessary to complete the funding for that.
And again, that's related to, those are dollars we would have had to budget for next year. So it's a savings from next year's budget.
Correct. And the planning assistance, if you want to just mention that.
Planning assistance is staff augmentation. There's, I think most of the folks at this point in time know who Dale Krupp is. Dale Krupp is a consultant who's been working from Rex, from Sprague, and he's been working with our EDC, and he's been working with us in regards to some of the other planning we've done. And this would be specifically to have Dale start to work with us to start managing some things on an overall basis, to provide, it's truly staff augmentation to help us with grants, to help us with all of the other items, to make sure that we have someone whose focus it is to really look at overall type of activities. It's the 27, it's a little bit more than this, but we're using $7,000 from the bar grant, which was reserved for project management. So he would also be helping us with project management. That would be one of the things he would be assisting us with. So that covers the other portion of what it would be for him. This makes it so we can do something with him. So it's something we can do this year, and it's something that we could truly use some help with. So it's,
No doubt.
and I'll leave Tony to Karen and Allison to comment any more on that, but if you have any questions, let me know.
I just want to mention a little bit about process. So for these projects, most of them are pretty quick turnaround. That was one of the things I looked for, because we have to have it obligated to 12/31. So it has to be a quick turnaround. A lot of these are on state contract or on purchasing contracts if they're larger capital items, like the police vehicle, the public works truck, the mower, because the selectmen would have to approve the purchase piece and the funding piece. So that would be sort of a future meeting. We have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to have all this wrapped up at 12/31, so we need some time to get some of this processed. So this is just suggestions.
You did also confirm that the charter requires that if we're over about $87,500, something in that area, it indicates we should go to town meeting.
Right, so if there's something that you feel you want to do and it's above that figure, then that would be time.
Can you say the number again, over 87?
87 for change.
Just noting that the mower is...
The only thing that came close
Is the mower.
And again, what we did is we tried to estimate and obviously make sure we could secure it, but the only thing that really comes close is the mower.
Yeah, and we're finalizing the pricing on that, so if it is, then without,
We either look for something else or we have to follow the process.
correct.
So, Tony, I know you don't really, there's no way of doing this easily, because I know so many of our capital projects are things that, they just get slid farther and farther, right? You never get to some of them. I think you probably chose ones that aren't in that
Correct.
category.
Right, these are ones that we
You think
typically do.
highly likely to do.
Correct, yeah. I tried to pick ones that are highly likely that we typically usually do.
And
Baseball grooming machine is one that we've been doing that.
Yeah, that one's
And at
gotta
some
be-
point in time,
that's
it's
ancient.
25 years old, and
Right.
it's on its last leg, so that's.
I understand that. But with this kind of would this typically result in some lowering of our mill rate obligations if we were, like if this came up this year instead of next year? Because I know we can't predict what's going to happen next year, because there are going to be so many other things that hit the budget.
Right, but we try to encourage strongly departments to plan their capital needs. And so something like a vehicle or a fire hose, you should be able to reasonably predict within a 2-year period that you're going to need it in that year.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm hopeful that, there are other things, well, of course, will be requested, but these were items that we felt were most likely to be requested for next year.
Tony also, as you can probably notice, spread it around, so it's not all in one person, one group department's budget, but
Yeah.
rather it really impacts on the town as a whole, so as to leverage as much as we can. And David, in terms of, I don't know if this is part of your question, but this total that states $511,000 does come out of capital spending on next year's budget.
Yeah,
So it's a
that's correct.
direct impact on the budget.
That's correct.
Absolutely. I understand that. And, that, to me, that's, I support that idea. It's a lot better than when we were originally looking at these, we were just getting wish lists from people about things that were blue sky.
Right.
And we tried to resist that. The previous board tried to resist just spending things in that manner, because we didn't think we would see any return on that kind of an investment. But this seems to me to be a little bit better, for sure.
One other thought that I had, Tony, with regard to the planning and the Beecher Building Committee, there is still room in what was already been allocated in the capital budget for community outreach, and if it moves on to some pre-referendum work and community outreach by the consultant groups. Well, we did not allocate specifically any funds for that yet. I sent an email just today that's asked the firm if they had a, ballpark idea of how much that might be, so we can start planning for that. And so we could see if the money in capital is enough, or if we needed to reserve anything extra. So
Okay.
to be sure that
The
we'll-
only caveat is it has to be under contract by 12/31.
Right,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
yeah.
And this, again, was for discussion purposes.
Right.
We're not doing anything with this
Right.
until the 13th. We can do something with it, about it on the 13th, but it gives us an opportunity to think about it and ask questions and see if there's
Other
anything else.
suggestions or
Mhm.
something.
Andrew?
A general question, does the Board of Finance get consulted or weigh in on
Yes,
this? Okay.
yes.
And have they already, or is
No.
that happening between now?
That would happen after your, because you're the first sort of stop.
Okay. And then, just backing up to the planning assistance, I would like more information on Dale, and, because from what I recall, when Dale was first introduced to us as a board, his support services were free and specific to economic development, is that correct?
Dale
And
has-
so I would like clarity for hiring him for planning, that's very general. You mentioned grants, so are these specifically economic development grants? And like, how does his expertise, if he is focused on that, I want better and greater context
Sure.
of what he'll be paid to do.
I can send you some detailed information in regards to his experience. He worked in the town of Hamden for a long time, a number of years. He was director of economic development at the town of Hamden. He's got other criteria. He's also been a consultant. His expertise is that his knowledge and experience is broader than simply EDC. However, if he was to just help us with EDC,
Certainly need
it would be something we would need, because right now we're trying to, our EDC commission is really kind of stepping up as well they can. But I know, for example, myself, I'm trying to meet with brokers, I'm trying to meet with business owners, I'm trying to meet with other people who can influence what happens in our business district. If he were to do that alone, that would be great, but he's also, and what I'll do is I'll provide you a charge before the 13th in terms of what his responsibilities would cover, and it would also include what his qualifications are.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the advantage, I'm sorry, Sheila, and one of the other advantages is that he's become familiar with us, with what we're trying to do, and what we're involved in as far as various different projects. So, but certainly I will provide that information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question just to understand. So these funds, we have in our strategic plan that the plan at the time was to allocate them through the budget process that we did at the annual town meeting. That document says we're spending certain budgets. So in order to, I take it this eventually would become budget transfer requests?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I guess I want to understand better, so the way we left it, and I'm looking at a document that might be the original capital budget and not the final, but it had $2,314,568 allocated for capital improvements in the business district.
Right.
And it seems like that's where most of the savings is now coming?
So if we look, that was split out here,
Yep.
so it went
Was
down to
adopted at
1.3.
1.3.
Right,
Okay. Yeah.
correct.
So
1.3,
And that, so I guess maybe what I want to understand from that bigger level is like that 1.3 is now going down, right?
correct,
If we were to contemplate
correct.
this.
It goes
So
down
the
to-
amount that it goes down, if, let's say it exceeds 87,000 because it's 20,000 here and 40,000 here and 50,000 here, is the act of reducing a line item tripping that requirement for?
No, it's our understanding that it's the expenditure that
So it's okay to take a number down that
Right.
was approved by voters in the annual town budget. And the question is, depending on where you're spending it, if you put all one of the transfers is exceeding 87, then it needs.
correct.
Okay. So, and is that the only line in the budget that's going to go down and then the other ones are just going to adjust?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right. And then, I guess I just had a couple of questions also about the Board of Ed playground improvements. I
Sure.
know there's 3 different playgrounds there.
Right.
So, do we know which?
I can tell you that
Yeah.
it's surface improvements on,
So teachers.
I do have something. for you.
They deserve it.
Actually.
They
Let's
do.
give them,
They do.
make it very safe.
I think so. I do.
There we go. Work on,
That was like-
you tell that one, just-
Yeah.
And then, and so you see all this work here that's been done.
Yeah. Maria, is it the north playground, the one right by the tennis courts that we're talking about?
I believe that there's some drainage issues there, and there's some ADA compliance.
Right. Right, that's some of the work, and then there's, apparently the big item in the capital budget is, if you go to the Board of Education, system, that's the year before, I think. The surfaces, I guess the surfaces are worn and need to be replaced.
Yeah, the patching is going
With
this
the-
distance.
Yeah. So that's a big part of it too.
And that was something
That's for
that they,
both, I think, north and south.
and they were planning for fiscal '26. Or last time
That
we
was
looked at it
planned
was-
for 27, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're saving money years from now.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
We had approved money for center tennis court
Right,
repairs.
yes.
Would that be appropriate for this?
Unfortunately,
Because I know that was a pretty quick turnaround.
so we have that approved in, I'm not sure we can get a contract by then.
By
Additionally,
December?
Yeah,
Okay,
the big issue is you can't do it in
just can't do it
in the cold weather.
yeah.
And we passed that, it has to be summertime work or, early spring, springtime work. So that's why we haven't done the work specifically because of that. And right now for us it wouldn't be easy for us to get a contract by December for something that won't be done until May.
right.
And just to clarify, the playground in future, it's all 3 playgrounds that they would be working for, including the kindergarten, early education.
I can certainly get more information for you for the next meeting. Yeah.
And so the only thing here that's not like capital though is planning and
Top 2.
administrative stuff.
Right.
Right, but even the sidewalk, center sidewalk,
Well, it's kind of, it would be lumped into capital because it's
that's.
administrative work for a capital project.
It's one
Right.
time.
But the top 2. since
Top
we're
2
getting
are
master
operating.
plan Planning assistance.
Correct, yeah.
And that's fine, we can use the ARPA funds?
You could. Yep,
It's operating, but it's not recurring,
true. Yeah,
right?
True, yeah.
Not yet.
Well,
Planning assistance might be a recurring need.
but that's something to take up down the road. It's not like we're
During the
using it
budget
to,
cycle.
right, during the budget cycle.
Bureaucracy. One-time expenditures, you do tend to,
Tony, we had additional expenses related to early voting, obviously we're incurring them now.
Yeah, we could. I suppose we can use it for that. Yeah, good idea.
It's actually a good idea.
Yeah.
What
And
about
we
that
do expect to
electricity?
exceed what we have.
Yeah.
Can we use it to offset the electricity issues we're having?
Not sure if you have a contract for that. I can look into that. Definitely early voting.
But literally while I was, just before I drove over here, there's also a, C. Martoni over at the high school indicated to me that they have an issue with an electrical component as a result of the power outage.
Right.
So I know that was about a $10,000 issue. Needless to say, I think it would be split, but nonetheless, I'm just wondering if that's even worth looking at.
I'll see where some of these come out and
Yeah.
we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is a CCW Master Plan update, CCW Property Master Plan update. And today we have Mike Cassis. Mike is our main point of contact with principal contacts with Cooper Robertson, who we've, at this point in time, officially engaged. So welcome, Mike. Thank you very much for making the time for us this evening. There's a couple of things we want to discuss. Obviously, we'd like Mike to give an overview and for us to be able to ask some questions of Mike. We also, one of the topics we'll discuss as part of this is a little bit about the process and timelines, things of that nature, and the advisory committee that we've been talking about previously. So when it comes time to talk about the advisory, we'll leave names out of that until such time as we get into executive session if that's necessary. All right, so Mike, with that, thank you. Yes, please.
Hi. So thank you for having me here this evening. It's great to see a couple of you again. We're really excited to get started on this project. We know how important it is to Woodbridge. We know how long we've been thinking about this project, how long it's been in the public discourse, and we're really here to help move the ball forward. Build some consensus around a plan that's feasible, that the community can support broadly, and meet your needs. And that's going to take us all working together. It's going to take a committed effort from this board, from the advisory committee that we're going to form, that you're going to form. But we're prepared to do that and be a partner along the couple of journeys here. Obviously, I can answer any questions that you may have about the process or go into any detail on it. But I know the first order of business is really thinking about the engagement, the schedule, and how it will unfold over the next several months. And we think this is about a 6-month effort that will start right away. We want to get far enough along that by the holidays, we have momentum that can carry us through that holiday period. And looking at the week-by-week schedule now, we think that's very possible. And we already have a great start in that regard. We were just meeting with staff last week to go over logistics and how to begin to mobilize, collect data, and start to look at the landscape of individuals, stakeholders, groups, commissions that we want to be part of this. So we're working through defining that as what we would call an engagement plan, exactly who we meet with, when we meet with, how we meet with them, how the feedback is taken in and used in the process. That's all things that we need to record and share with the decision makers on the process before we get started. We think that maybe the most important thing about projects like this is you start with very clear expectations and defined goals. And we don't like to come in with any preconceptions about what those may be based on where you've been before, especially for a project like this that's had so many bites at the real apple. We want to make sure that we hear from you, the decision makers, exactly what's on your mind, where your priorities are, and that we make sure that those are addressed in meaningful ways. We've talked about really using data and communicating the value of whatever happens here in multiple ways, not just economic value, but ecological value, cultural value. And this club did hold a very important place in many of the community's hearts for many years. So what will it be in its next lifetime? So it's kind of where we are with things right now. We don't have any ideas about where we're going to end up, but we have an idea for how the process is going to go. And you all will be central to that. So I will talk more about that in executive session, but those are kind of our thoughts at the time being. So you know, Cooper Robertson, architecture and planning firm from New York City. We've been in business for 45 years. I've been there since 2008. I've worked for many communities like this. I do work like this in my own community on facilities planning, on a chairing an ad hoc facilities committee. Most recently, we were in Middletown working with Mayor Forsheim to help with that big riverfront master plan. Again, a project that they really need help sort of breaking the log jam on, and we're really proud of our work there. Within just it seems like within a month or so, They were able to garner $14 million in grants to move their projects forward because of the way we structured the process and making sure that all the stakeholders that needed to be engaged were, which included state representatives and folks that could really help them with some of the early phase remediation efforts. Don't know what that might look like on this project, but I think it just underscores how important it is to think 2, 3, 4 steps ahead as you're structuring the process. On the team, we also have Newman Architects from New Haven. Herb Newman, who passed earlier this year, was the architect of the clubhouse. His son Peter will be involved in the project, advising as well as some of his partners. Langley Engineering from New Haven, who has a great knowledge of the site in the area, are on our team as well. And Chuck Corsi, who is an engagement expert, will be on the team to make sure that we're reaching out to your community in the most effective ways. We also have Ken Woodward, who's a local cost consultant, who will help us understand what the real level of investment required will be for any given development or conservation approaches that we might want to consider here, including long-term maintenance of open space and landscape. So it's not just things that you are building, how much that would cost, but how much will it cost to keep the area green, so to speak.
Questions?
Yes.
Nice to see you again. So we had a previous conversation about ways in which this project could move forward with the Board of Selectmen staying at the center of engagement and understanding of everything that's happening. I was heartened to see the new version, your Exhibit B to the agreement. I did just get it, I think yesterday, and I haven't had time to look at it in depth, but the project phases that you have outlined, you have a little graphic, and you have the project kickoff, analysis, discovery, initial concepts, and final plan. I wonder if you could speak a little bit, keeping in mind, this group wants to stay involved. So how do you see us in that week by week? Sounds like you have a more granular version of this somewhere.
We're working through it.
Not ready yet, okay.
We're working through it and trying to align it around commission meeting schedules, your meeting schedules, holidays, of course. But broadly speaking, we are mobilizing now, and that's kind of the kickoff phase, and making sure we go back and reaffirm the goals that we talked about in the interview process and in the proposal. And then we'll enter an analysis and due diligence phase where we're simply collecting as much information as we can, and that is technical information about the site, its assets today, the buildings and structures that are there today, and also the information we can gather from stakeholders, from you, from the community, and we'll be doing that in very targeted, small group settings, even one-on-ones, all the way out to large community settings, and some of them might be digital, some of them simultaneously, we'll be doing analysis of the actual site to try to understand physically what's there. An important part of that is establishing some baselines for what the ecological value of the place is. As a former golf course, it bears some real investigation of what decades of that kind of maintenance has done to the seed bank and other aspects of the land. And at the end of that phase, we'll have an understanding of what the goals and priorities and what the opportunities are for this site. And that will be summarized in a final phase presentation, report, which will lead us into testing various different options using a set of what we call guiding principles, which represent the values that we're trying to achieve. They're less instructional from a physical planning point of view, but so these are the things that we'd like to achieve as a community. We'll also develop a kind of evaluation framework or methodology for how we understand which of the various options that we're testing are most successful in meeting those principles or goals. Sometimes it's kind of simply a matrix that we score with, sometimes more conversational. We'll see what works best for you. And then eventually what tends to happen is you take these various different tests and the most successful aspects of them get melded into a single preferred plan. Here it's called a final plan. We'll begin to layer in things like how do you phase these plans into implementation. You can't do it all at once. What does the capital outlay look like from early to later phases? What are the zoning and other implementation actions that may be required, or conservation actions that may be required? So there's a level of complexity that's considered in all of this. And of course, cost. And funding and grant opportunities would be identified, broadly speaking. And then in the final plan, we're developing it in a more illustrative manner. So you're getting to actually see visually what this could look and feel like. It's a great way to communicate and build consensus out in the community. And we'll put a finer point on all of those technical aspects of cost and phasing fixed in, what the next steps would be for zoning. And that would all be documented in a manner. I think we've kind of left it open to whatever's the most useful for Woodbridge. And that would be around the 6-month mark, we're thinking end of March. Now, it could be a little bit later, it depends on how exactly we're going to engage the various different groups. One part I left out, but it's important to note, is that in terms of making sure that this plan is feasible, we'll be taking in an understanding of where the market is today for various different development uses, and making sure that if anything is proposed here, that it actually is filling an actual need for Woodbridge and the community. And so we'll be working with SLR, the consultants who we haven't met yet, but we understand are looking at that. We just want to make sure that we can filter their work down to something that's relevant for this site, and it's not too broad. So we'll have that.
And when you talk about SLR, they're doing two different things for us, but you're talking about
The POCD, I'm
conservation
sorry.
and
Yes, the
development.
POCD.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing that, and then when we get to testing the feasibility of various different development options, we'll be reaching out to the development community to make sure this would actually land in today's market. What's the cost of construction? Those things move around so quickly. We don't want to be looking backwards at data. We actually want to be talking to people who may potentially be ones who would want to do work here. And I know you're always fielding this unsolicited communication. So I think there's a good network to draw from there. Newman has a great network from there. So we want to be able to really understand those rules.
So I just want one follow-up
Yes.
question, then I'll let others, I know everyone has questions. So in the 4 phases, you mentioned sort of a reporting that culminates before the next phase starts, right? That reporting and decision-making is to the Board of Selectmen?
What we've talked about is meeting with the Board of Selectmen monthly. And that may not always be in person. I think maybe on the balance, we're here about half the time, but I think while the work is really being generated and ideas are being generated sort of the middle third or half of the project, I think we're here a lot more often in person just because it's going to be easier.
But you'll be looking to the Board of Selectmen for approval to go to the next stage,
Yeah,
right? Do we have it right? Do we go to the next stage?
You are the body that's being asked to endorse and approve the work. The advisory committee is there to engage with us. They are, as I understand it, is that they're representing the various different commissions that we have, and will bring a deeper level of expertise around technical issues. So I think they're there to guide us and to engage with us on technical issues around conservation or economic development, the various different interests that they represent. So it's a little bit more of a roll up your sleeves kind of work session environment with them. And the idea is we would meet with them and then meet with you afterwards. They are, as the name suggests, an advisory body.
have many questions, but most pertinent or relevant to the conversation and information you were just sharing. You mentioned engaging with SLRs relative to the POCD development in town. What are you considering in the state's updated POCD as it applies to guidance throughout all?
We'd like to understand the state of the, for example, the housing market. If there's any gaps in your retail market where you're seeing leakage or for certain uses, where folks are traveling out of the township for things that you may desire for them to have in the township. Hospitality could be another one if that's something that you desire to have in the township. Could we consider it on this site? But understanding at a macro level where there may be gaps in the market demand right now that Woodbridge could fill is what we're looking for. And when we talk about the housing, it's more granular than that. It's what type of housing. Is it age targeted? Is it senior? Is it townhomes? We want a little bit more detail from them on what that could be. Again, we don't know if they have that level of detail yet. That's what we're going to discuss with them. If not, we know how to gather it. We just need to plan for that in our first place.
And you're referencing when you say if they have it, you're talking about the state POCD?
Yeah.
Okay.
To my understanding, the state has put climate change as kind of the center of its approach to conservation and development. And so I'm just wondering how your considerations would integrate that model. And based on your response, it doesn't, I don't know that it would. But I understand, obviously, Woodbridge's POCD is more pertinent to this cause. I don't want to dictate the group discussion here, but I think the most pertinent point of discussion is the advisory committee, that for the purpose of the public, this is the same thing as a steering committee, because we've been referring to it as a steering committee in other conversations, or at least I have. So is this the same thing, or are there two?
Referred to as a steering committee and other documentation, and I've always, I feel it's to some degree a matter of semantics, but generally I feel advisory committee is what fits the bill based on my conversations with the consultant.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not speaking to one versus the other. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. And so are we okay to focus on
Sure.
that?
Is there any other questions related to other?
I have a question on financial projections. So you spoke about, identifying grant opportunities and, making sure that there was, room in the market to have, whatever we thought up for that type of area and that was feasible. Would this work also include some projections on whatever is decided, open space, business, housing? Would there be financial projections for the town for what the cost of the upkeep, maintenance versus the revenues would be for each individual option?
Yeah. We can provide certainly high-level cost projections for the maintenance of public open space, based on the various different kinds that may be here. Maybe some active recreation, passive recreation. But I would imagine that we're going to be planning for types of spaces that exist elsewhere in Woodbridge, and it may be best to work with Tony and staff to understand what the actual cost is for Woodbridge for those types of services now, and then apply them here. Ours would be, based on benchmarking from other communities, frankly. So we can provide the quantities and takeoffs and the description of the facilities. But I think applying costs if you have them today would probably be more accurate.
And or revenue or quality
And revenue
life
as well,
improvements.
yeah.
And even the unseen refer to them as revenue, but the unseen benefits of working towards preserving climate, preventing drainage issues, et cetera,
Yeah.
all of that factors
Yeah,
as
we
well.
will be, I mean, the goal of providing an ecological baseline is that we can compare that to whatever is proposed. In terms, we can talk about reduction in greenhouse gases or vehicle miles traveled if we're talking about consolidated uses and what that could lead to in terms of carbon. We first have to establish a baseline, then we can look at different ways to measure what may be later as a comparison.
Thank you.
Can you elaborate on that ecological baseline, your approach and what's considered and what that might look like?
Yeah, I mean, we're still developing exactly what the metrics are, and I think that's part of the first phase engagement. We'll be meeting with you, meeting with other folks on the commission, and saying, given the expertise that we have on the team and the resources that we have, the time we have, what are the things that we should make sure are part of our assessment? So I think there's a long list of things that we could do, and we will work with you to figure out what we can accommodate in the time and the resources we have. But so that is something we know we're busy on.
There's expertise on your team. That was one of the components.
Environmental engineers,
Yes.
landscape architects.
Who bring a lot to the table as
Right.
relates to that type of
Absolutely.
analysis. And
Yeah, that's absolutely. And in some levels, part of the bar grant requirements, the environmental assessment. So it's part of the work that we're doing with regards to stormwater and other things in the program.
So as you develop the timeline further, is that something that you would expect we would
The
end up
board is
seeing?
seeing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would be part of the updates. And we typically begin every meeting, this is where we are in time, and what we are trying to accomplish in the next month, this is what we've done since, and, yeah.
So for the benefit of the public who's watching, there is a community open house, and it looks like it's at the end of the analysis and discovery piece. Is
Yeah.
that-
That's what we're thinking. We want to be able to gather a base of understanding first so that we aren't just coming and saying, tell us what you think, but we have some ideas that are
Something for them
beginning,
to react to.
something for them to react to.
So do you anticipate that you'd come to us before that community open house to say, here's what we're going to show at the community open house? So real avid viewers can see that discussion, because that will happen in public as well, right?
Yeah.
You've mentioned, keeping, or we've discussed the desire to keep the Board of Selectmen in the center of
Yeah.
this process. You provided a pyramid image of the key players.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping you can provide a description of this, because the way I visualize this, we are not in the center, and there's a big gap between the Board of Selectmen and the public and the boards and commissions, and I might just be too literal of a viewer, but visually, I would see if we were in the center, that like a series of circles and overlap and a web kind of, rather than this hierarchical structure. So can you just help improve my understanding or interpretation of this?
It probably is better reflective of the decision-making structure.
Okay.
So if you look at the left side, I think it begins with inform and goes all the way up to approve.
Yes.
So the hierarchy is, and the shape is representative of decision-making, not of level of engagement, number of touch points, et cetera.
So it's not how the project is going to proceed. It's not going to, we will get it at the very end. You're going to have us involved more. So maybe another diagram in addition to it.
We have a radar kind of bullseye version of it too. I mean, so, that one is probably more indicative of, how ideas sort of funnel down through from the broad, we will have the broadest number of ideas from the public just by the number of voices involved, and kind of,
Yeah.
We're visual people, there's no end to the number of shapes.
Well, and I think our interest in this conversation about keeping the board centered in it stems not just because we want to be the center of attention. It's because we feel like this is the kind of issue that really requires the top leadership to be fully engaged all along. So, and that's certainly what I heard from you during the interview process, and I'm pleased to see it in this document. I do think we need to, I'm glad we're being recorded tonight, because I think people will be assured that the Board of Selectmen is at the center of this. If they see us actively engaged and they see you coming to us for decisions, and then I think, getting that word out, because one thing I would not want to see is for this project to go awry because people have different views of what is happening and who's making decisions and where the decisions are being made. If we keep the decision-making right here, people will know where the decisions are being made.
I'll just add, looking at this, I see us as members of the Board of Selectmen being a part of all of these levels. We're members of the general public providing input. We are a board and commission, as noted in that second tier, involved in the consulting, involved in briefings, and then engaged, as has been articulated at every step of the way. So I see us essential and throughout this document.
And for whatever it's worth, from my past, my career, from a corporate standpoint, we use pyramids a lot, and it's very much like you say, it's authority and hierarchical, as you mentioned, Andrea. It's like, oh, this is how it works. You've got this group of people, then this group of people, but ultimately, these are the folks who are going to, the top of the pyramid is generally, in my past experience, those folks who are going to make those decisions as relate to people who are engaged in the process of bringing, of being included in terms of what's happening. So,
Well, I will say, I love how deeply you're all thinking about this. It's a marker, a sign this is going to be a very successful project.
Thank you. That's nice to hear. Just for clarity, core team being comprised of Mika, who is obviously the first selectman. So, in this hierarchy, if Mika is, providing feedback to guide decision making as part of that core team, is that assumed representative of the Board of Selectmen?
The decision-making will come from the Board of Selectmen. The core team is there as support for the process. And I heard the phrase staff augmentation earlier. It's kind of reverse of that. They are staff augmentation for our consulting team, making sure we have the correct understanding, we have the resources that we need, that there's not things that there aren't blind spots. I mean, they're really there as partners in the consulting team. To the degree that we need to understand and filter the advisory committee's input. There's a lot of voices. We want to be able we need that to be able to come to the consulting team in a focused way. They can be the intermediary there. That's an important role that they play.
I'll add a little bit to that. There's nothing I would, or Tony, myself, Karen, but I'll speak for myself. There's nothing that I would plan or dictate to the consultant that I wouldn't bring to the board, plain and simple. So it's anything I would say to them as part of our core team interaction. I would say in front of the board and in front of the public, and it'll be consistent with what I'm looking to do and what I'm saying and doing. So.
I have one more quick question. So some of the deliverables are essentially meeting minutes, right?
Yeah. We tend to call them notes. It's probably a semantic thing, but we try not to dictate every word and try to understand the direction that's being given, the kind of general tone, and how that goes.
And do you see notes as a way of keeping the public informed as well, or only sort of, I guess what I'm wondering is, are they going to be public information or not?
Well, I guess that would be a question that I would put back to the township.
There would be minutes and they would be open to the public. They are public, but.
Yeah, I mean, once they become part of the communication, they become
They
public.
public.
It's just whether or not we want to post them on the town's website. We wouldn't have any issue with that.
Okay, so if people want to stay informed all along, they could ask to be, informed when there's new minutes or new rules.
Yeah, totally fine with us.
They'll be there to access, like all of our other committees.
So not necessarily the 14th, though, because that's a staff group. That's not a public.
That's not what I'm referring to, you're right.
So advisory committee, and then obviously when you come to the board of selectmen, all the material that's coming to the board of selectmen is also all information.
Can we speak to advisory committee composition, specifically not the names or bodies, but the process of developing this committee?
Yeah, it's something that we've had several discussions about. I think the idea that the commissions are represented by individuals who can speak to, on behalf of the commission and provide the technical knowledge that the commission offers to the town directly to us in a consolidated way is great value to this process. And having a good cross-section of the commissions, which I understand is the intent, is very important. So you have a lot of different points of view out there about the property, and to have those all represented on the commission is very important as well. I think it will be a place where our ideas will really be galvanized by debate, of the pros and cons of various different ideas, and as I imagine happening here, we don't shy away from that. We like the commission to be able to engage with it as well.
Yeah, I think there's consensus on that. I'd like specifics of the commissions and like which specific commissions, who is involved in the consideration of the members comprising. We've discussed only once in our last Board of Selectmen meeting, a newer, well, I shouldn't say only once, but an approach, but nothing has been formalized to my knowledge. And so there were a handful of commissions identified, but I see value in bringing in representatives from other commissions as well. And so, in this concept of the board being involved in all stages, is there opportunity to have that discussion and consider which specific commissions, consider what the criteria for individual appointments or nominations may be, who is ultimately agreeing upon those suggestions or not,
we haven't been asked to provide recommendations for which commissions are represented.
Okay.
We'd be happy to review it. We would need a lot more information on their mission and charge, their composition.
And that's more discussion for us than necessarily for the consultant. That's some decision that we would have to. And that's one of the topics for today.
so let's have it.
So from that perspective, we had talked about 5 commissions in particular. We had talked about conservation, housing, EDC, recreation, and Kupa. Now, those are the 5 we discussed. So I know since the last time we spoke, someone has suggested human services as a 6th, and that's something that we should bring to the table and talk about. If there's others beyond that, at that point, what I would suggest is that we consider the amount. That is something that we would work with the consultant on in terms of, we have a lot of commissions, and what we were trying to do with the initial 5, and I certainly see the value of human services also being part of that, the 6. There's some direct correlations there in terms of what we would want. It's not an expensive number of people to become cumbersome based on our discussions, and so that's where it comes up with those 6. Okay. Additionally, I had mentioned that I had always envisioned at least a couple of members of the public having some role in this as well. So if we were to do 2 of those, we're at 8. Or, if we did 1, it's 7, but if we did 2, it's 8. And that seems to be a number that would work,
Yes.
based on our discussion. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today is whether or not everyone feels that that's viable, if that's sound. Now, the next step beyond that is if we say, okay, we like that, let's do the 6 commissions, its next question becomes who? From my perspective, my recommendation and my thought process would be that we pick the chairs of those commissions. Very specifically because those were people who were selected by the commission to represent those commissions. Additionally, when you look at the qualifications and the credentials associated with the people who are chairs, for the most part, they're impressive. We're very fortunate to have the people that we have there. And the people who are representing us as chairs certainly fit the profile and have the knowledge, experience, and qualifications to act exactly like Mike is describing in terms of what an advisory committee would be. So in a sense, if we, my sense is we could talk about the commissions and we could even talk about the chairs, but that would be what I'm putting on the table, if you will.
Okay, yeah, so I want to throw out there the consideration of the Agriculture Commission, considering that most of the soil is of statewide farmland importance or mapped as primary farmland soils, and to not pay homage to that seems a little bit irresponsible or neglectful.
Certainly wasn't trying to be either of those.
No, and I'm not, I didn't mean to
I know.
assume that,
I
or
agree.
imply that you were, but I'm just saying we should at least talk about it, because you can't get that back. You can't just like make soil that. So
I think it's worthwhile, Andrew. I understand the value.
Yeah.
I understand the value.
And then I would also be curious, I know conflict surrounding members of the public being, I have no concerns about that, but I would like to understand what criteria for those people, how they would be selected, what gaps we would be trying to fill.
There's a-
And, yeah.
No,
that's it. I just, there has to be
There's some
criteria.
folks who we can discuss at our executive session that I've thought about, but that's part of the dialogue. That's part of what we want to discuss is exactly what, I can name some folks and you can say, oh, maybe that's good, or maybe we want to do something else, and that's part of the discussion. So,
Another commission to consider, and I understand, you don't want too many people and there's a lot,
keep it
but
in
just
mind.
throwing it out there is the Sustainability Committee. I mean, they've done such good work in our community.
Totally.
You've thrown out the idea of green energy here, in development, in open space, in recreation. Sustainability should be at the forefront. And I feel like that could
Certainly,
be
there's
another.
nothing to preclude sustainability there, and at some point you draw a line, and you say this is the number of folks we would go with, and there's nothing to preclude them or any of our other commissions and or committees to participate in the process.
Sure.
And they can do that through a number of different ways. They can do that through the Board of Selectmen. They can come in front of the Board of Selectmen and let us know what they think as the process is going on. As Sheila indicated and Mike confirmed, this will be very open, very transparent, very public in terms of the information that we're sharing. They can go to conservation, and, there's other areas that they can. So if we need to draw the line somewhere, we can, it's not to say you have no say, it's just to say these are the folks who will be part of the actual formal part of the process. So
Andrea, I grappled with that myself when I took out and looked at all of the other commissions that were there, thinking, and again, I had circled and wrote down agriculture and human services. Also planning and zoning isn't on there either, and some of this may be zoning, but again, as in a commission of 12 people, it's, I understand the need to keep it a workable group. And then I also, when we get to the point where there are final plans, there may be fire and police commission that need to weigh in on impacts to the community as well. Maybe they don't need to be involved in the initial phases, but when we get to those final phases, I'm sure that they would, have some input as well as the impact on the town. So, I echo your sentiments on all those being great commissions, and I guess I would also want to make sure that there was an avenue if we needed to keep that core group to a manageable number. Is there a way for these other groups to engage with Cooper Roberts?
What we do sometimes, because you have a limited number, is that we'll try to group groups around subject matters to meet together that have some kind of synergy relationship to one another. So ag with sustainability, or police and fire, all the emergency services would meet together, maybe with the public works. So we make sure that we're being efficient with our time. And sometimes, frankly, it's just a benefit for them to be in the same room and have a dialogue with us at the same time. So that would be my recommendation for anyone who's not in the regular meetings, is we find a way to meet with them along with some of their sort of affinity groups.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about the meetings themselves, the stakeholder group? So you mentioned that they're meant to have different points of view and for there to be some robust discussion.
Yeah.
So is someone from Cooper Robertson going to facilitate that discussion?
Yes, it's a kind of presentation format with lots of points along the way to open it up for dialogue.
So basically, an agenda will be put together with the expertise of Cooper Robertson.
Yeah.
This is how you get through these things, right?
Yeah.
So unlike our other boards and commissions that don't have anybody preparing their agendas for them,
Right.
you're guiding these. These are guided interviews.
It's fairly structured. Yeah, I mean, it's a very structured process.
Right.
People will understand where they are and where they're going, but they're being asked to provide feedback.
So it's very unlike our other committees. So I just want to get a sense of this. So we would be asking people who are used to their committee structures. And then the other thing you mentioned was that they're representing their commission or committee. So the process by which they would do that, they would need to bring information to their committee, have a noticed meeting where they're discussing it in public, form consensus and say, here's the consensus from conservation or housing or whatever committee.
I would imagine that they would be providing updates during their standing meetings.
Right. It would probably impact timing, because in order to actually have consensus, the chair can't just speak on behalf of the board, as you're seeing tonight, where even this board, right, we all want to have a say, and I'm sure all the members of these boards and commissions, because, as Nika mentioned, they're so highly skilled, they're bringing passion, they maybe have decades of experience. So all the members of these component boards will be represented by a person, but will those board members also have a chance to have their discussion heard?
Were the chairs of the commission?
The chair would then take the discussion from their committee and say, well, I was asked to find out what our stance is on whatever the conservation angle is, let's say. Here's what we've come back to you with.
I think we would be able to see far enough ahead where if they really needed to, if it was an issue that we felt like the commission needed to weigh on, we would be able to ask for that in advance. But I think the expectation is that they're attending meetings and having dialogue about the issues at hand at the same time. But if there was anything that we felt like needed that level of input, we would try to forecast that out.
So one more question for you. So you have stakeholder interviews here as well. How do you see that happening? Does that happen in addition to the advisory committee members? There's other forms of stakeholder interviews?
Yes, like the local development community is an example. We will go to them quite early to talk generally about what the development climate is right now around housing and hospitality. We'll go, if there are representatives in the conservation community here that we can speak to.
Like the land trust.
Like the land trust, we'd like to understand that early. So it's those types of stakeholders.
So that leads me to think that maybe the additional members of the committee who are at large are not serving a board or commission, they could just become stakeholder interviews instead. Because otherwise, who are they representing? Just their own opinion? Or if, let's say, we are going to have the land trust represented, then
They could be
that's
part of the information sort of gathering
as a
phase. And
stakeholder
we'll,
interview.
we'll have to, reasonably, we'll have to cap the number that we could participate in.
Right, so that's
And-
all the details that you haven't shared with us yet about
Well, we have,
exactly how.
that's part of the engagement plan, though, so is in development.
Right.
And even for those, we may take the group approach as well, and try to have, and try to work with the core team, again, not to, so, because we only see you once a month, to come up with a list of 5 people that we can meet on Zoom for an hour.
Right, so
and-
all the different land conservation groups together.
Yeah.
Can I follow up just on that to clarify? So, because Sheila, what I heard you asking was about the commissions, providing a consensus from their commissioner, the representatives. But what I heard initially was that actually you were looking for the advisory committee members to engage on the technical issues related to their commission, as opposed to bringing a decision or consensus from their commission. Do I have that right? That you're really looking for engagement as opposed to bringing some sort of decision or consensus?
Right, they're providing feedback and input. You are the decision makers. If they, for some reason, feel uncomfortable providing feedback and need to go back to the commission, we will try to encourage that to happen in as timely a manner as possible. But what they're being asked to do is to engage with some technical issues around housing
So recreation, yes, recreation, use of public owned property,
Right.
conservation and such. And I just wanted to note, you mentioned the state sort of assessing the state market in terms of housing and hospitality, but I think as Andrea has alluded to, I think one of the things we're interested in seeing, what is the market in terms of the ecological services and also recreation is being a really key factor.
Yes.
I think that's known, but just because it hasn't come.
No,
up, I
all
just
of
wanted
this,
to make sure.
all of this should be included for sure. I mean, we want to make sure that anything that is proposed here is justifiable. It's not, this can't be a wish list kind of, or that sounds good kind of project, that you really have to
Relying
have
on
some.
you to maybe not a wish list.
To the point of the different commissions, and we mentioned it early on when you were speaking, you said one of the reasons you can't really speak to timelines and things of that nature is because you're still in the process of identifying, okay, when do these commissions meet, so you can coordinate the meeting for this meeting, so it's in such a way. And then obviously still stay in touch with us, and make sure you're meeting with us. So obviously we can provide the details as far as when the commissions meet, once we've identified the commissions that we want to consider here. So, and Sheila, I understand your point about the public in terms of it just seemed, from my perspective, always like you want somebody there. But I understand that they're not necessarily representing a particular larger group, a formal larger group. So it's again, open to discussion. Maybe if we don't do that and we do an additional commission, maybe that's the way we go with it. But particularly since what I'm hearing you say in terms of the public engagement itself, it's going to be extensive. And there's opportunity for us to, like you said, say, it's really important, we really like you to talk to this group or these individuals, and we can get that done.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I would say one of the values of potentially having, members of the public who are not members of a commission would be to ensure that we have a diverse group there. There's certainly strengths in all of our commissions, and no doubt we could make it a diverse group within there, but I think that's one of the values I see when I was looking at the commissions and structures, that there's other people with various areas of expertise in town who might be good candidates. So I don't want to out of hand exclude the potential that a member of the public could be a good fit to ensure that we have both a skill set and diversity in a representation on who ends up on that advisory.
Would you say that one of the aspects of diverse opinion and diversity of the committee would be something like generation or length of time living in town, people who are new, we want to make sure we're hearing that, and we also want to hear from people who grew up here, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I live in a small town in Westchester, and it seems like it's kind of on similar arc. The Woodbridge is on a lot of young families. I've been there for 10 years, but really in the last 5 years, We've seen volunteerism really go up, and from young families that have come to town and want to participate and be involved, and it has shaped the discourse, it has brought issues to the forefront that wouldn't have happened otherwise. I think there is great value in that, but it's really, I think, a judgment call whether or not they're part of the advisory committee itself, or it's a focus group that's set up to make sure they really understand their outlook on Woodbridge. But I do think having different generations represented in the process is very important.
Do you see value in the advisory committee having or really any committee for that matter, but like having an odd number versus an even
Odd
number
number?
of members?
On the advisory committee? No, are you saying just to break out a vote? Or is that-
Yeah, or
No,
just for, I don't know.
I don't think the advisory committee would be asked to vote on, pass judgment in a formal way. I think it is about collecting ideas and feedback, and it's our job to synthesize that into some themes that we will then report to you.
I just want to take a quick second for everybody to look around this room, because the art that is featured here is all of the country club. And Mike, if you have not already been made aware of the habitat assessment and the deep forestry report, I see copies of it on the piano back there. And I would imagine they would be integral to your
Absolutely.
work.
Fitting that we're here tonight
It
in this
is,
room
yeah.
with this display.
It is.
My question probably isn't, oh, maybe it has something to do with Cooper Robertson as well, but I understand when we're looking at this list and we're getting ready to go into executive session at some point. Are we going to talk a little more extensively about the particular 5 commissions that are here? Because I understand all those. I must say, maybe Maria has the answer, or you, Mika. When I get beyond these 5, because we're talking about a piece of land, so I can easily understand COOPOP and conservation, and even, rationale, strong rationale for these 5. Human services I have a harder time with, particularly stacked up against something like sustainability or agriculture, because it's a piece of land, not a human. And so I just wanted to know what the thinking is on human services. Why that suddenly comes in as opposed to one of those other ones.
Primarily because of their interests as far as what could end up at the country club. And again, it's at the property, and it's not directly the way, as you say, the original 5, which is the reason the original 5 were the original 5 is because you can make some direct correlations. So it's not as direct as some of those. And I'm not sure I'm there either, David. It's just, it was suggested, and it's like, no, I think it's, and I know that they have a keen interest.
Well, just,
So-
okay, and then that covers sort of
I see
the
where-
word human.
Yeah.
But don't, doesn't recreation deal with humans and
I think-
housing and EDC and conservation? I mean, aren't those things kind of already there? I mean, human services sort of seems, particularly when I look at what our human services mostly do, which is largely dealing with the older people in town, not so much.
Well,
And the youth, and
And
youth
youth.
services.
So if we're
And youth
increasing
services.
youth and
And
elderly.
youth, but I mean, yeah, those are, I can understand the youth piece comes in a lot of different ways, but I would imagine.
So I wonder if this could be broken up into commissions that would that have an impact on the initial planning, and then commissions that would have input when there's some final plans or some final choices to read through. So in other words, like agriculture, economic development, conservation, those all may impact the early planning stages. And things like EMS, fire, police, human services, town services, they may have more of an input when we actually narrow things down to, here's actually what we've come up with as possibilities.
So that's the
weigh in on
services
this.
part of human services?
Perhaps.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just, and again, I'm just sort of thinking as we go along, but maybe one way to sort of, divide this up, because I do think that there are, all of our commissions serve a huge service to this town and inform us of very important things. And I would want them to be engaged. The point is, at what point is their input the most valuable, and what is the best service of everyone's time? And so maybe there's a way to sort of figure out what is important to the early planning stages of this, and then what comes in when some plans are a little more put together.
So I'm a little more concerned, though, about the fact that we're trying to kind of get to the right size. And so we're making some choices. And we've covered this a lot in our strategic plan, where we see that there's overlap. And this is one of those cases. So, and we tried to do some consolidation there. So it looks to me like on some of these, we're just, when I look at that particular issue, because I don't understand I do understand what you're saying, but I don't understand as much. It doesn't strike me as much, but in human services. So I would be, if I'm looking at it and say, well, I'm going to put human services right there with the Recreation Commission, because those are both more about, activity type things, and choose one of them. I mean, I wouldn't choose both of them, because that's just an expansion of what we're already trying to get down to a workable number. So that would be the way I would look at it, would be more of a choice between commissions that have some overlap that affect this particular project. That's all.
So I would just speak a little bit to human services as both department and the commission that sort of works with all our other entities that are dealing with youth, family issues, and elderly. And so in our strategic planning, we talk a lot about the options to age in place. We know we have a growing older population, and if they could stay in town, and it's my understanding that we're going to be looking at options for elderly housing. We may be looking at options for affordable housing, which would be potentially would bring some students. And so the group that's already very engaged with how the town can support those entities now that are in town, if they're heard at the initial planning stage, then you know that there are certain services that are already happening and where they're being coordinated. And I think also maybe all of the advisory committee members are serving as like stakeholder engagement pieces, right? Stakeholder interviews, really. But I feel kind of strongly that human services should have a seat at the table in the initial planning, right? So that the input into what are the feasible options. But can you tell us where you see the advisory committee, what are they going to do after that stakeholder piece is done and now it's gone into the next phase?
They would continue to be involved on a monthly basis, just as you would. That's the current thinking. So they would be there for progress updates. And some of them may be larger milestone updates for bringing work that really does need feedback that will be brought to you for endorsement from one phase to the next. But yeah, we think that they're on the same rhythm as you are.
Town council is here and can hear you all and has been for about 15 minutes, just so you all know. He's up in the clouds listening, and he can communicate I realized you guys didn't know he had logged in, but he's here.
I think Sheila's explanation is a good case. The way I would look at that is, well, maybe that's the case for making that human services and not recreation. Now, I don't see that the case for making it a bigger
Well, maybe they could coordinate.
group.
Maybe they could coordinate.
But the advisory aspect of this only came in because of our bar grant.
No, that's not entirely true.
Not entirely true, but the reason that it's made up the way it is, or the reason that it has some of the composition, started out as a discussion resulting from the bar grant signatures.
The bar grant indicates that a group should be involved, in interacting with the consultant. regardless of whether we got the bar grant or not, from my perspective, this is what I would do.
Okay.
That's one thing I'm hoping people understand. This is not as a result of the bar grant saying this is what you should do. I think I've always wanted, and I think I've always articulated, that I feel it's important that we have a diverse group of stakeholders who have more knowledge than the basic knowledge maybe some of our residents have, who are engaged in town in a different way than our residents are. And that speaks to our commissions, so.
But under the bar grant, doesn't this advisory group have a specific role within the grant?
It's to work with the consultant. That's right. So from the way that I perceive it, or this could just be me, my opinion, and the way I'm interpreting it, they're saying you need to have a group of diverse members on this. And we said, great, if that's what we agree. I agree. We absolutely, I think most people would agree. So if we're going to do that, from my perspective, here's who they should be. And this was done way back when, and that's what I felt then, and it's still what I feel now, is that it makes sense to have our commissions. These people are close to what's happening in the town. They recognize what the processes are. They recognize, they've been talking about their particular elements, and their particular charges, or things associated with that for quite some time.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they would be involved in the process, and that's the reason we're here. So it's not simply, and we have latitude there. It's what we want to do. It's, the bar grant, what was
Well,
put in the bar
I'm still
grant.
just focused on which commissions.
Yes.
That's
And
my
for example,
focus.
yeah.
It's not what you're talking about that I'm concerned.
And from my perspective, in terms of what you're saying, actually, I'm very much in agreement with you. I think we have to limit it, and we have to identify which we think are the best to be there. And the limit becomes, what's the limit? What's the limit? How many, who do we want, and how many do we want? That's where we need to, if we can get there, the next discussion is everybody comfortable with the chairs, considering if their commissions are going to be represented on the committee, that they're the chair of the committee, they be represented. And the trick there then becomes minority representation. Full disclosure, is because we're running it like a committee, so then we have to identify what the potentials are from that perspective. And I haven't looked at that specifically right now, but that's something that we would need to look at. So,
Well, I think,
I'm sorry?
That's in your executive, that's the
Yeah.
next would be the discussion.
So we've
But what I would like to, even before we go into executive session, what I would like to really make sure we do discuss is in open session, because, so everyone's hearing it, is how do we feel about the committees, the commissions, which commissions we want, which commissions, and do we want to finish that discussion and come up with something? And then how do we feel about the chairs after that?
So can I ask a quick question? So if the initial 5, and then there were 3 more that were identified, sustainability, agriculture, human services, that would be a total of 8.
Mhm.
If we eliminated the 2 at-large, non-commission people, then we're at 8. 8 is within the realm of doable, right?
Is 9 within the realm of doable?
Would you have?
Well, we could have 1 community member in that case. I'm also leaning towards 9, generally speaking, in the
For the odd
context
number.
of the odd number, and it's greater by the minority representation laws, it requires at least
Mhm.
a greater
It's
number.
3 people, whether it's 8 or 9, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
It's the same number in
looking at it.
representation, but it would be 8 or 9, it would be 3 people. But Mike, let me ask you the question
I'm trying to write this down.
is 9 a manageable number?
Yes,
Okay.
9, and
That's-
then the committee would be staffed.
Correct.
by 3.
2 or 3, exactly.
I think that's.
Got that down.
Oh, you want everyone to, we will have limited time together. You want everyone to feel like they have an opportunity to contribute thoughts and ideas. And you want diversity, so there's not redundancy ideas, but potentially conflicting ideas around the same level, same area of expertise or focus. So I think 9 checks those boxes.
Thank you. So, with that in mind, is there any significant objection to that?
I think the chairs of the committee, I think, are generally a good idea. I don't,
I thought we were doing 1 commissions
We're
first.
gonna choose the
and
commissions
then-
first,
sure.
Okay.
and then do you wanna,
So
is
the
that,
com-
you wanna vote on?
The commissions we discussed, so then we're talking about 8 commissions?
We're talking about
Or-
adding.
Those are the
Initial-
names, that
initial-
the 8 commissions have been named tonight.
Correct. And they are Conservation, EDC, COOPOP, Housing, Human Services, Recreation, Agriculture, and Sustainability.
And then I have plus a potential member of the public.
Well,
Yeah.
so let me throw
TBD
something
is
else
named
at
as
you,
well.
because we've talked about this in the past. A 9th member could be a member of yours.
And is, to Steve's point, is planning and zoning just an ongoing?
No, it's planning and zoning
communication?
can't participate because of their
Because of their-
role.
okay, thank
So
you.
it would be, they would, even if they would, all they could do is sit there and listen. They really can't offer anything outside of their
Okay.
jurisdiction.
Then that's a
So-
perfect explanation for why, in case anyone asked. Okay, thank you.
I feel that it's not necessary. I feel the Board of Selectmen will, as a board, have their opportunity to do what we need, and we do have a board member as staff, so I just don't see the necessity to take someone else out when we're going to be so central to the process anyway. What's the point of having another individual there, just for the sake of saying we have another individual there, when we could have somebody who's bringing a different sight, a different
Perspective.
perspective and information to that committee.
So
So,
let me ask you about your role. So you're ex officio, you've been attending lots of board and commission meetings and participating. Would you intend to do that with this group as well?
I would be considered part of staff, yeah, and I would intend, yeah, this is why I'm here.
So you would be participating at the advisory committee, speaking just like they're speaking, or all
As
the stuff that it
As hopefully I've demonstrated,
Take
as hopefully I've demonstrated before, I interject where I think it's appropriate, but generally speaking, in the committees that I have attended, I generally let them act as they act, as part of what, let them do what they do. And then let them bring me in if they feel they need, I'm there, if they need something from me, or if there's something that I feel they should know, then I'll contribute, and I would approach it the same way.
Right, so in the same way that if someone's representing the Conservation Commission, they're representing the views of their board, is that how you would participate at the advisory committee, or?
In terms of the Board of Selectmen, well, absolutely. For example, if they were going off the rails in some way, shape, or form that I know is opposed to what the Board of Selectmen has indicated or will indicate, that's what I bring to the table. That's exactly what I bring to the table. So, yes, at that point in time, I would speak up and say something.
Right, so if there was ever a time when there was specific guidance from the individual board or commission that you're seeking, and you're asking the chair to represent the board or commission, you also would come to us and we'd have the discussion and then feed it back through that way. So essentially Mika would have a dual role, because he'd be participating like a commission member, unlike Karen and Tony, who could if they wanted to, I suppose. They don't tend to do
The only
that.
distinction is the advisory committee is providing general feedback for us and not directive. That's the only distinction. So I feel like Mika would be there as a conduit to help the committee understand the discussions and the context around where the board is in the process. Remember, they're meeting with us before we meet with you. So, he could only kind of be looking back at sort of the last meeting and providing any updates with regards to that. We'll be reviewing new content, so.
Right. So essentially, we have a 9-person board already now, with the 8 committees and
And
you.
Well, you're staff.
I'm staff. It wouldn't be 9, it would be 9 in addition to me, Karen, and Tony.
Yeah, we would be looking at the 8 commission chairs for the feedback.
Also, I don't know if we were in.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine, that's fine.
Dave just has a question about
I just had the question.
the ag commission.
Unrelated to
Well, yeah, I also, as far as the Ag Commission is concerned, it should be noted that it's actually the timing right now that we're starting, because I believe the Ag Commission only meets certain period times of the year.
Correct.
So it is, you know, it is kind of, and this does fall into, and hopefully will be ending just around the time where they start not meeting. Not to say that the person can't continue on this committee, so this actually offers the Ag Commission an opportunity, so. Because I was looking up, but what I don't know, and it's what's not on the website, is when they meet.
It's the second Tuesday of the month at 8 PM, and they just had their October meeting.
Yeah.
So,
October 3.
Mike, I'll give this to you real quick.
It's October 3, well, yeah.
I'll let you know, see afterwards, but I just jotted down the dates so you can see, and it looks like it's feasible.
Okay,
We meet the second Wednesday, as you know,
yes.
second Wednesday of every month, so it'll be interesting. It'll
But
just
they
be-
meet only via WebEx Agriculture,
Mhm. Yes.
just so you know, their
Yes.
meetings are online.
So-
I started a list and looked at the agendas that have been posted for this month, and a couple of them have changed from their normal dates, so I listed that, so I got that.
Excellent. And also, what we need to do, based on our conversation here, is to now make sure we're on the agenda for any commission coming forward so that we can communicate what the expectation is here and
Yes.
and start to make, and I don't mean you necessarily, obviously, it could be, but Karen, so if you, that would be great. Thank you for
Okay.
mentioning that. We want to get on their agenda, is really what it boils down to.
Okay.
So, any other thoughts in regard to that particular topic?
To the commissions and potentially the 9th person. Is that?
Do they know? Not necessarily, they know, but if they're.
No, but I mean, is that, I am in support of that commission. I'm happy to continue the conversation on, like, you know, if or based on your response, assuming that 9th member would be a community member, I would like to discuss, but maybe it can't be until after we know who from each commission, but what criteria we would
And we can-
consider.
we can
Because there's
discuss
how
it.
many, 10,000 people, how do you do that?
So we should probably have that larger conversation before we make any decisions.
What larger conversation?
We're going to have further conversation in executive session, right?
Right, no, well, we could, if we feel like these 8 commissions are who we want to represent us on the advisory board, we can say that, we can do that, we can make that. As a matter of fact, I'll make that motion. I will make a motion that we move forward with the 8 commissions we discussed, to be part of the advisory committee.
All
With the understanding. The
Right,
8,
with the addition.
the 8, with the understanding that the next step in the process will be to discuss the particulars of that.
I'll second.
And now we can continue to discuss it under the motion.
So I guess I'd make a friendly amendment that we wait on that decision until we've had our executive session discussion. Because I've got a couple concerns that probably needs the legal as well, assuming the attorney's joining us.
Yeah, he's on the call.
He's on.
He's here.
My only thought would be if we amended to leave the possibility open of a community member so that we make sure that we had some diversity of thought and representation, et cetera. So, and make sure that we leave that possibility open.
Alex, you stood. Motion's been amended?
So I made a friendly amendment, are you rejecting it?
No, in terms of, help me understand, well, let's talk about it. We're only talking about the 8 commissions, which won't change as relates to the 9th individual. So I'm not quite understanding what the executive session, I don't want to discuss something in executive session that we should do in public, and it's like that doesn't affect individuals from a legal perspective. If there's a legal question on it, again, if you just let us know what that is and how it pertains to the executive session,
So
I'm happy to entertain that.
I guess my concern again is the role of the Board of Selectmen. And I know there has been discussion in public sessions at other meetings about what can and cannot be the role of the Board of Selectmen, and I wanted some clarity on that. I think it's relevant to that larger discussion. You guys may not agree. I'll abstain from the vote on if we're proceeding with it before I can ask my questions, but I prefer that we can have that conversation and then take this vote. I don't understand why we need to take this vote before we go into executive session.
I have the motion as, hold on, I just want to clarify with the amendments. The motion was to agree that the 8 commissions having members on the advisory committee are those 5 plus Sustainability, Agriculture, and Human Services for a total of 8 commissions. And that would be the commissions that were going to be included. That was the vote I had, seconded by Steve, with leaving open the option for a 9th member being a member of the public. That was what I have. Okay.
Right, and the friendly amendment was to just postpone the vote until after the executive session. So is there a reason we shouldn't postpone the vote until after the executive session? I mean, it's not gonna be a lengthy executive session. We're talking about
I guess I don't
20 minutes
understand
later.
the legal concern with voting on these 8 commission members.
No, it has to do with the role of the board of selectmen.
I think that has been pretty well articulated at this meeting, that we are involved in this entire process. I think there was a great clarification of the pyramid, that's more of a decision-making pyramid as opposed to an engagement pyramid. And I think, for me, that clears up, though I do agree, the initial look at that diagram lends itself to different interpretations.
What Sheila's suggesting doesn't sound to be inconsistent with our process, because when we go into executive session, I assume that what we will be talking about will just be the individuals that we want to select to this particular advisory group. And that won't really, coming out of it, we can say, okay, let's figure out how many people, we can vote which commissions we're going to do. We've already figured out perhaps the people for whatever reason we've done it. But I'm going to have a bigger problem with your issue on a diverse level of thinking, and also on your suggestion of choices out of these commissions. So, because...
But when we speak of individuals, that's why we're going into executive.
Exactly, but the process that we got to this, every one of these commissions is only chosen by this board and previous boards. And your choice in moving forward on commissions was to reappoint everybody who was already there, really, for the next term out, to keep them on, whatever that might mean. So I think, I just don't agree that we've had a diverse opportunity in past boards. And we've been rectifying that, but I don't think that when you look at choosing the chairs, virtually all of them are going to be not representative of diversity. They're going to be all majority people from these commissions who are vastly, almost overwhelmingly Democrats. At this point, when I look at it, I don't know all of the commission chairs, but at this point, all of them have been only appointed by one party in the past practices. So, I don't see how I'm going to support any of that, because it's not going to be diverse, in my estimation, in terms of diversity of thought or in terms of the way we got about getting to those commissions. And I have no doubt whatsoever that what you say about all the individuals and the talent and everything else is absolutely true. But from the perspective of the politics of it, to represent both a true diversity of thought, because there are a lot of people in this town who have a very different opinion about what should happen with the country club. And for example, we've had at least 2, 3, maybe 4 failed attempts to develop the property for residential that has yielded an entire group of people that have formed a PAC, in fact, Woodbridge, who are in opposition to that idea. We haven't put them on any of these advisory committees, and that's clearly a different thought, and they may represent a lot of people in this town.
So my experience with that, though, is in talking to residents in town, that that's a very bipartisan group of people.
Yeah.
That it's not necessarily represented by one political party. It's a group of people who have a strong feeling, and there are different groups in town that have strong feelings, but and albeit somewhat limited, as I delved into, this board as opposed to the Board of Education, but my limited experience with them is that they're very passionate about their area, and they do have expertise in that area, but it's also, they're not necessarily representing a political party. They're all looking out for the best interests of Woodbridge, and they're
Who are you talking about now?
just diverse groups of people in town, both the group that do not want any development, groups of people that do want some development. They seem to be a very bipartisan group of people. They don't seem to be representing a certain political party. They're looking out for the interests of Woodbridge.
What I'm saying is the eight commissions that we are
Right.
considering represent one party in this town because of the composition of the last 10 years that has been perpetrated. And I don't see any leadership from our side of the aisle.
I guess what I'm just saying is that I look at this not necessarily as a Democratic or Republican or independent issue. I look at this as a Woodbridge issue. And there are groups of people, if there's one thing that certain people have gotten together, regardless of their political background, and agreed on, it's their cause for Woodbridge. And so I absolutely, I hear what you're saying about, the history of how things have been appointed, and I hear where you're coming from. I just want to know, how do we rectify that and
So
come
would
to this
you
group?
then choose people from those groups?
Well, that's why I wanted to leave open.
That constituted themselves,
Yeah.
as opposed to groups of people who were constituted by a political process that in my estimation was flawed.
So can I?
Yeah, and that may be fair enough, but these people are representing their commissions. So I do also think it's a good idea to have representation from the town and from diversity of thought, but these people are representing their commissions.
Let me ask you to hold this thought just for a moment, because I have to go back to somewhat more, for lack of a better word, technical on this. The issue at hand is whether or not we should have the 8 commissions. They should be represented. My concern with the reason that I feel we should, before we go in, identify that that's the case, is because we seem to agree that that's the direction we want to go. And if we go into executive session and come out and for some reason decide, no, it should be 10 or no, it should be 7, there was discussion, it would indicate that there's discussion during executive session that lent us to change things, okay? And what my sense is I don't know that needs to be discussed. I'm thinking that we should be discussing this in the open, not in executive session. What we're discussing, the discussion we have is important.
Yes.
And I'm glad you brought up your point, but that's.
My point wasn't about the commission. My point is about, I don't think you can just point only people from the commissions and have anything that I would call diversity of thought.
And here's the way I look at it. Conservation is concerned with conservation. We want people who have that concern and who have that expertise and who can express their views as relates to conservation. That's a thought. That's diverse from the people in housing who might have their particular thought. And that's diverse from the people in recreation and all these different people here. It's the thought and what they represent. Now, if those people who represent those particular groups and that particular subject matter or intent or whatever you want to call it, if they feel a particular way about a particular issue, that's not what they're there for. They're not there to decide whether we should do A or B. They're there to input on what their commission the duties that their commission performs. I understand your concern, David. I'm not naive, okay? I understand your concern, but minimum representation will be looked at, okay? And that's where we have, that's a discussion we need to have. Is, okay, we want to do this, how do we make sure we get diverse thought from a minimum representation standpoint? That's an important item.
In an ideal world, if it functioned that way, if it had been functioning very differently to compose those commissions over a decade, and so on and so forth, under the ideal conditions, you're 100% right. I have no doubt about that. However, I think when you when you purposefully pick people who agree with one side of an issue for a long period of time, you do not get the diversity that you're suspecting. And I haven't really seen, I've seen it be for too long a political process. I didn't join to be part of a political process. I joined for the same reasons you did, because I want to do something good for the town. But I don't support the idea that the best choices are going to be the chairs of specific commissions that I don't think have been handled the same way that you would handle.
And as we discuss those individuals, that is appropriate to do under executive session.
Okay. But
All I'm suggesting right now is that I'm not sure, and if you feel like, well, it could change, if we go into executive session, we could change our views on that, on the commissions themselves, on which commissions should be represented, then there's, in my opinion, maybe there's a point, maybe we should hold off on doing something. If that's not the case, then
So
why?
I guess I would just interject that my motion to put this off allows for greater input and discussion before a decision is made. And I would just reference here that we want the Board of Selectmen at the center of this project. And we also want to work collaboratively and be hearing all our voices. And so giving it a little bit more time tonight could result in a unanimous vote where if we force this vote right now, it may not be a unanimous vote. I would like to keep open the possibility that we will be unanimous after having our executive session discussion. So if we're going to model the kind of decision making. So, but that is my point about waiting to make decisions until we've had more discussion. So that's a friendly amendment.
We are having more discussion as far as that.
Yeah, and even more in executive session.
Yes, and we will certainly at that point. I just wanted just to say, again, this is an advisory committee, which is part of the larger process. It's not the process. So all sorts of people from all over the country input throughout the process.
We're a group of...
I hear you. I just wanted to say that, because I don't want to distill this into the group. It is not the group. It is an advisory group that's going to be advising from their commissions, or that's how what we were discussing. But to your point, the motion on the table is to include the 8 commissions. And
I'm speaking to that.
No, right. So,
Well, there's
but what I'm
probably
hearing,
nothing on the
what I'm hearing is an objection to it. But one of the things we started on earlier was not potentially having 8. We had talked about 5 or 6, and having additional open spots. That could be appointed from the public.
Okay.
So, I think there are possible paths. The motion on the table at the moment is for the 8.
And I'm only speaking to that.
Well, no,
So-
actually, the motion on the table is a friendly amendment to postpone. So we have to dispose of that.
Is that a motion? Is that an amendment, or is that you've asked to go to executive
No, we
session?
have a first and a second.
It
That's
has
the
to be a
motion.
friendly amendment. If it's not a friendly
Not a friendly
amendment, then it would have to be an amendment that we would have to vote on, right?
Right.
Yes, yeah. We have to vote, we have to dispose of my proposal first.
Exactly, yeah.
So we have to
Robert's
vote on
rules
whether
would
we're
say
going to postpone or
that-
not.
That before we can accept a friendly amendment, we would have to figure out whether this one is truly a friendly amendment.
Well, we need our
And then
attorney
vote-
to
Then perhaps
weigh
vote
in
on
now.
it if it gets seconded.
Right?
No,
So
I
Nick
think
can
we're
tell
all
us how to
familiar.
dispose of this?
I think we're all familiar enough with the rules to know that, what we need to do. So from that perspective, I have no issue with waiting to finalize the vote until after we have executive session.
So you withdraw the motion.
No, the motion stands.
Okay, so we're
just
tabling,
We're tabling it.
the vote until-
after
okay.
the executive session.
okay.
Okay.
But you have to vote to table it.
All in favor? Or is there any other discussion
Okay.
on this? Or is there a second, first of all, for
For the friendly your motion was both friendly amendment, or you're
No,
going
to-
with this friendly
the
amendment?
amendment?
Table.
The table, Sheila's amendment. Is there a second?
To table it till after the executive session.
Is there any need for additional comment, or
No. Andrew seconded.
Andrea, okay.
you all in favor? Okay. Very good, we'll table it till the end. And
We would need to make a motion now to go into executive session.
I think it's appropriate, yes.
So the motion to go into executive session to discuss the don't know if there's a pursuant to in this case.
Yes, there is. It is 1-200-6A.
1-206A.
Okay, and who are you inviting?
I'm inviting our Board of Selectmen plus Tony and Mike Aziz, I think that's, can Mike stay for this?
Yes, you can.
Yep.
And Karen.
Karen Crosby and
our town.
And our
council.
town council from the sky? Okay.
Yeah.
Nick Waganti, motion made for executive session. Is there a second? Sheila, okay, Sheila seconds. All in favor?
Well, before we go into executive session, there is one comment that I'd like, discussion purposes. We're going to take, I want the public to know, we're going into executive session specifically to discuss individuals and make decisions as relates to different people and what they do. So from that perspective, one of the things that is required is that we let those people know that we will be discussing them. So when it comes to the chairs of the commission, I want this board to understand that I have reached out to them to let them know we would be talking about it. I've also let them know that they're within their right to come and sit in during the time that we discuss them. So we will start executive session. If there is anyone here who wants to participate, when we get to their name, they have the ability to do that, and we will call them. We will then invite them into executive session. But for the start of this executive session, we'd like to invite, as Stephen indicated, Mike, Karen, Tony, and Nick. And Nick, who's in our town attorney, who's on remotely. Okay, with that is understanding, is there any other comments or all in favor? We'll move into executive session.
Okay, 7:52 PM.
Thank you. We are now out of executive session. There were no motions made. There were no votes taken during executive session. We will continue, as we had indicated, with the discussion as relates and the motion that was made as relates to the commissions that will be part of this, that we said we would delay until after executive session. So I'd like to just give a moment to Deputy Selectman Muno to return so that we can continue that conversation if it's okay with the rest of the group. So, thank you. So there was a motion made that we would consider the 8, we would consider conservation, EDC, CUPOP, housing, human services, recreation, agriculture, and sustainability as part of the overall group. So there was a motion made, there was a second. It's open to discussion. Is there anything more that anyone has to say with regard to this?
I mean, I'll just add, there was an addition of.
So leaving the
To
possibility.
leaving the possibility of a 9th
Correct,
member.
thank you. Thank you, Andrea.
So I have a question about, we're not technically naming a committee because we don't have a name, we don't have a charge. So if this is just a concept, a conceptual framework, is that what this motion is? The framework is that we're working towards.
We recognize that there will be a committee. There's been different names or different nomenclature that we've used to identify them. One that we've heard is the Technical Assistance Committee, or something along those lines, but the intent of it being a committee that actually advises the consultant with regard to technical information related to what their charges, what they're doing. So from that perspective, I like that name, but we can certainly have discussions as relates to that.
Just to clarify, technical assistance or?
I'm sorry. Technical assistance.
Assistance, I've seen it both ways, to
Okay.
be honest.
Technical assistance, if that's the preferred, I think that works from my perspective.
So I would just, I asked this question because I would like to make sure that there's some clarity here, that we haven't fully defined what the role is. We agree there's going to be some sort of committee with this vote, but we don't know precisely what the role is. So
My sense is that what we would like to do is have the consultant assist us with specifying the role so that these committees that we select will have a charge and will have something that they can go by and understand what this will be, what this group will be actually functioning. It will be to assist the consultant with the technical aspects of it. An example that we could use is, for example, what programs do we have in recreation that we're using? What facilities do we have with recreation that we're using? What are the plans? What are some of the concerns, whether it be the pool or whatever the case may be, that those committees, each in commission with regards to their area of expertise, conservation, what they bring as far as technical information is concerned, that they'll be in a position to assist the consultant with that information. That's basically what we see it, use those examples.
That's correct. And
Thank
then
you,
we can
Mike.
provide draft language for a charge for that committee to the board.
To that end, what I'll offer from a comment standpoint is whether or not we need 8. And I'm wondering if we reduce it down to 6. We know that there were 5 that we had pretty much discussed and agreed to. Would the other board members consider an additional 1 out of the three additional that we discussed? And if that's necessary, or do we want to go with all 8? And as Andrea pointed out and Maria made the motion, we do expect that there would be a 9th member who would be kind of a public member or an ad hoc member.
well, do we have to decide for sure now? If we start with, we envision it as a 9-person group with these 8 boards that we just specified plus an additional person, and then we decide later that it's really only going to be 7, we're not really bound, right? by this
Well,
number. It's just conceptual framework.
Well, from my perspective, we're here, we have the resource that can help us identify what we're doing, and I'd like to hear what everyone says in regards to whether it should be what we indicated previously, or whether there's a change we should make on that.
I mean, unless anyone feels strongly, I do feel like these 8 commissions will provide some technical information to the consultants in this beginning phase of data gathering. I mean, unless someone has, can inform me of, a reason why they would want to do that, which may be completely valid.
Anyone? Is there any additional comments?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a little confusing. Are we-
Yeah, would you mind just reading?
No, I'm happy with the 8 here. I think the 8 that were identified can provide some technical information to the consultant to get started in this beginning phase of the process. I know we had tossed around, some of the other commissions. I really think that their input is equally as important, but perhaps not at this phase. So I am comfortable with this, but I am open if anyone feels strongly that there's a certain group that should not be, by all means, feel free to educate.
I don't disagree with these 8 named commissions.
When you suggested 6, I understand that smaller committees usually function better. So I could stand with you on 6. I would figure I would make a choice on that.
Well, so without understanding a little bit more about the role, it would be hard to now eliminate. I would feel better if we started with what we have here, and if when we get more information about what the charge is, et cetera, we say, maybe we don't need this committee or that committee. Right now, I don't have enough information to narrow down from what we have. So I agree with Maria, this 8 is a good starting point.
I think it might be challenging to narrow down later, but I hear you. But I think it's clear, what's happening here. This is, as a technical assistance committee, they'll be meeting regularly. I understand that there's a 6-month, work plan effort. The idea would be that this group would not be doing any decision-making, to be very clear. This is not a decision-making group, but this is a group that you can meet with regularly to get assistance related to their commissions. As opposed to, there's going to be information from the public and all the boards and commissions and all stakeholders, but this is a group that you can tap for technical assistance related to their expertise in their commissions. And so I'm fine with these 8 commissions, but I wouldn't want to assume that we're going to come back later and decrease it. I understand to the point, but I don't want to go ahead with that assumption.
Dave is fine.
I also think as the process goes forward, the commissions that you meet with, even the ones that are not on this list, some may have more input at one point than others. It's, it's a very fluid process.
It's a fluid process. I don't know the particulars of your committee bylaws, but where we have worked in the past, sometimes those committee members change over the course of a project. If a project goes in a direction where it needs additional assistance or moves away from a direction they thought it would go in, and there are members that simply don't need to participate as committee members, but maybe in other roles as part of the process. But I would again suggest some flexibility going into that.
Mike, I assume that there's always the opportunity to bring in subject matter experts on particular topics, whatever they may be.
To sit in with committee members. As I said, they are not providing direction, but there will be ideas that get generated through discussion. Give the kind of brand new slogan, but innovation is teamwork. Like having these people in the room with ideas going back and forth across different subject matter expertise is a good thing, and it's a reason why the committees are a valuable part of the process, opposed to meeting each one individually where they're kind of siloed into their own areas.
Thank you. Motion has been made. Anything else? Any other comments? Any thoughts? Please do.
I just had one question. Should another group, board, commission, whatever, want to have specific access, aside from maybe the general public access, that would they be able to come in front of us and say, we've really got an issue, here it is, that we'd like to bring forward to your consultants?
Always.
Is that a way that we would function on this?
Or
If we decide-
we could have the consultant contact that commission directly and see what their.
Right, but I'm
their
thinking if
thoughts are.
somebody feels like, why were we left out of this? You know, and they say, we've got something to say here in this because we've been researching this.
They
And
can
they come to
voice.
us, and maybe it's, I don't know,
I understand.
I would expect,
the park committee or something, I don't know.
I would expect that group to, make, whether through public comment or being on our agenda, say we have something to share with the board of selectmen, then we could have that discussion at a public board.
I
of
just
Selectmen
wondering
meeting.
about process, what we thought we were,
Yeah,
how we were gonna take in information, because we have a public comment all the time, and we should be hearing from people like that. So how do we forward that information on? We're more accessible than our consultant, because we walk around town. I mean, we're gonna,
And it seems like the consultant, that's part of their job too. So,
Sure.
to
It's
be
to be
gauged.
available for the town however best. And, we have done things like hold office hours, where we have a certain time set out every week, and commissions or committees are invited to come and join that. I mean, we are really here to make sure that we are a sponge for all the great ideas that may come our way, and opinions that may differ from, the majority. We're not trying to run a process that excludes any of that. We haven't talked about that yet, but we could do something like office hours.
I just want to make sure that we have multiple avenues for public input, because it's important.
I think it is important. I agree with that. So. But certainly, we will be available, public comment will continue to be part of it. I think we'll have more of it. I think we'll have more of it, and that's the process. That's the process, so.
Mika, by moving forward with this vote, I just want to clarify, it's exclusive to the boards and commissions and not to the specific members or the
Correct.
process. Okay.
Correct. We will be, as relates to the particular members, that's something that we will take up at our next session. Anything additional? The motion is on the table for to use these 8 as the technical assistance committee, and all those in favor?
Plus an alternate.
Plus an alternative. I would say, do you want me to read it?
Forget it.
Because I specifically have it written to include one extra spot to be
Plus an
reserved,
alternate.
yes.
Well,
Or not an alternate,
they wouldn't
plus-
serve as an alternate.
Plus-
One additional.
One additional, that's what I meant, I'm sorry, one additional member to be,
That would
yes.
be a 9%.
So it'd be 9-person total, to include a representative from the 8 commissions of Human Services, Agriculture, Sustainability, EDC, CUPAP, Recreation, Conservation, and Housing.
And for purposes of the board understanding, obviously the staff will be reaching out to these commissions to assure that they're able to, and they want to do this, and then we'll go from there. Anything else? All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you very much. There are no more items on the agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
9:42.
I think you were.